You don't belong here anymore.
Leave with what's left of your dignity.
One day you'll understand what you just threw away.
Your mother left you everything.
180 million. This can't be real.
Amara Vale was still holding the takeout dinner she had bought with the last cash in her purse when her husband opened the door and told her she no longer belonged there. His mother stood behind him, smiling like she had waited years for this. His mistress wore Amara's own silk robe. They called her broke, plain, and useless, unaware that a sealed estate file had already named her heir to something far larger than their pride. Amara did not scream. She only stared at the lock and felt her marriage die. Welcome to today's story. If you enjoy emotional drama and shocking twists, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more unforgettable stories. And before we begin, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. But that night had not begun with the door. It began with a missed call. Amara Vale noticed it during the last hour of her shift at the Fairview Community Health Clinic, a non-profit clinic tucked between a laundromat and a discount grocery store on the east side of Columbus, Ohio. Her phone had buzzed twice inside the pocket of her worn navy jacket, but she had ignored it because the waiting room was full, the printer was jammed, and an elderly man at the front desk needed help understanding his medication instructions. That was who Amara was. She stayed. She helped. She made space for people who were usually rushed, dismissed, or spoken over. By the time she finally checked her phone, the number was unfamiliar. There was one voicemail. The caller had left a calm, professional message, but Amara only heard the first few words before another patient asked for her. "Ms. Vale, this is Miriam Cole regarding your mother's estate." She stopped the message there. Her chest tightened at the word mother. 2 weeks had passed since Lydia Hart's funeral, and grief still moved through Amara in quiet waves. Her mother had lived modestly, almost stubbornly so. A small apartment, old furniture, generic tea bags, a used sedan she drove until the engine gave up. There had been no reason to think the word estate meant anything more than unpaid bills, a storage unit, maybe a few old documents. So Amara put the phone away and finished her shift. At 8:12 p.m., she pulled into the driveway of the townhouse she shared with Nolan Vale, her husband of 4 years. The house glowed brighter than usual. Every downstairs light was on. A black Mercedes sat at the curb. Celeste Vale's white Lexus was parked behind it. Amara sat in her old Toyota for a moment, holding the paper bag of takeout on her lap. Thai noodles for Nolan. Soup for Celeste because his mother always complained restaurant food was too heavy at night. Amara had bought it with the last cash in her purse after Nolan texted, "Don't cook. Just come home." She had thought it meant he wanted peace. Inside laughter floated behind the curtains. Amara stepped out, smoothed the front of her thrift store coat, and walked to the door. Before she could use her key, the door opened. Nolan stood there in a charcoal sweater and pressed slacks clean and sharp in a way that looked planned. He did not smile. He did not reach for the food. He looked at her as if she were a problem he had finally decided to solve. Behind him stood Celeste Vale, elegant in cream silk arms folded across her chest. Her face held the soft satisfaction of a woman who believed the room finally belonged to her. And near the staircase, barefoot on the polished wood floor, stood Brielle Mercer. Amara recognized her immediately. The real estate consultant from Nolan's office. The woman whose name had started appearing too often in conversations Nolan claimed were professional. The woman who now wore Amara's pale blue silk robe, loosely tied at the waist. For a second, Amara could not move. The takeout bag warmed her fingers. The house smelled faintly of wine and perfume. Someone had lit the expensive candle Amara saved for quiet evenings. It burned on the entry table like a small insult. "Nolan," she said carefully. "What is this?" Nolan exhaled through his nose, almost bored. "We need to talk." Celeste stepped forward before he could say more. "No, Nolan. We have talked enough. She needs to hear the truth, plainly." Amara looked from Celeste to Brielle, then back to her husband. "Why is she wearing my robe?" Brielle lowered her eyes, but not from shame. More like amusement she was too polished to show. Nolan's jaw tightened. "Don't make this about clothes." Amara gave a quiet, stunned laugh. "My marriage is ending in my hallway, and you think I'm making it about clothes?" Celeste's mouth hardened. "That tone is exactly the problem. You have never understood what it means to be part of this family." The words landed in a familiar place. Amara had heard versions of them for years. At dinners, at holiday parties, in small corrections about her clothes, her job, her background, her lack of social connections. Celeste had never called her poor directly. She preferred words like simple, limited, unsuitable. Nolan looked past Amara toward the driveway, as if checking whether anyone could see. "This isn't working anymore." Amara waited. Her heartbeat slowed in a strange, frightening way. "You're not happy," she said. "I haven't been happy for a long time." "And Brielle is—" He did not answer. That silence answered for him. Celeste moved closer, voice low but sharp. "My son has carried this marriage long enough. You work at a charity clinic, Amara. You come home tired. You bring no influence, no stability, no future. Nolan is building something now. He needs a woman who can stand beside him." Amara looked at her husband. "And you agree with that?" Nolan finally met her eyes. "You need to leave tonight." The paper bag slipped slightly in Amara's hand. She caught it before it fell. "Tonight, yes." Brielle shifted by the staircase. The robe moved against her shoulder. Amara saw her own initials stitched into the cuff. Something inside Amara hurt so deeply, it became calm. She set the takeout bag on the entry table right beside the burning candle. Then her phone lit up again inside her pocket. She did not reach for it at first. No one else noticed. Nolan was still talking, saying something about dignity separation, making this easier, how she could stay with a friend for a few days. Celeste added that Amara should not embarrass herself by begging. Amara heard all of it from a distance. Finally, she pulled out her phone. The same unknown number had left another voicemail. This time the transcription appeared across the screen before she could stop it. "Ms. Vale, this concerns your mother's estate. Please do not ignore this message again." Amara looked at the voicemail transcription until the words blurred. "Ms. Vale, this concerns your mother's estate. Please do not ignore this message again." For one strange second, the hallway went quiet around her. Nolan was still speaking. Celeste was still watching. Brielle was still standing near the staircase in Amara's robe. But Amara's mind had gone somewhere else, back to the funeral home 2 weeks earlier, back to her mother's folded hands, back to the small envelope the director had given her after the service. She had put that envelope in her bag and never opened it. Grief had made even simple things feel impossible. "Are you even listening?" Nolan snapped. Amara lowered the phone slowly. "I heard you. Then don't make this difficult." Celeste gave a small, satisfied breath. "For once, do the graceful thing." The graceful thing. Amara almost laughed. For years, that phrase had meant swallowing every insult before it reached the table. It meant smiling when Celeste corrected her grammar in front of guests. It meant wearing the same black dress to every family event. Because Nolan said there was no point wasting money on clothes she would not know how to style. It meant pretending not to see the way people looked past her when Nolan introduced her as my wife. She works at a clinic, as if her life ended there. Amara had never been ashamed of the clinic. She had chosen it. Fairview was not glamorous, but it mattered. It served people who were one missed paycheck away from choosing between insulin and rent. Amara knew their names. She knew who needed larger print instructions. She knew which patients were too proud to say they could not afford a refill. She made less than Nolan's assistant, and Celeste never let her forget it, but Amara had never measured her work by the size of the paycheck. Nolan did. He had not at first. When they met, he had seemed impressed by her quietness. He said she was different from the women in his world. He said he liked that she did not care about status. He said simple things felt real with her. Now simple meant embarrassing. Now quiet meant weak. Celeste stepped closer, her perfume sharp and expensive. You entered this family with nothing but good manners and sad stories. Nolan tried. We all tried. But a man with his future cannot be dragged down by a woman who refuses to rise. Amara looked at Nolan. Is that what I did? Dragged you down. His eyes flicked toward Brielle before returning to her. You don't understand the circles I'm in now. Brielle finally spoke soft and careful. Nolan has opportunities, Amara. Big ones, the kind that require alignment. Alignment. It sounded like a word from a meeting, not a marriage. Amara's fingers tightened around her phone. She could feel the edge of the device against her palm. That small pressure helped her stay steady. The truth was there had been signs long before tonight. Nolan taking calls in the garage, Nolan deleting calendar alerts when she walked into the room, Nolan laughing at messages, and then going cold the second she asked what was funny. Brielle's name appearing in conversations about investors, private dinners, luxury redevelopment, and people Celeste called useful. Amara had noticed. She noticed everything. But noticing was not the same as being ready to lose a home. This isn't only about Brielle, Nolan said, as if that made it kinder. This is about reality. We want different things. No, Amara said quietly. You want a different audience. The room stilled. Celeste's expression hardened first. Careful. For the first time that night, Amara did not lower her eyes. No. The word was small. It did not shake the walls. It did not stop the betrayal. But it belonged to her, and after years of careful silence, it felt almost unfamiliar in her mouth. Nolan stared at her. Excuse me, I said no, Amara repeated. I won't stand here while your mother explains my value to me. Brielle looked down, but Amara saw the corner of her mouth move. Celeste gave a cold laugh. Value what value exactly? Nolan pays the mortgage. Nolan built this life. Nolan has the connections. And you walk in with takeout in a paper bag still smelling like that clinic, acting as if sacrifice is the same thing as contribution. Amara glanced at the entry table. The takeout bag sat beside the candle untouched. She had brought food for people who had already decided to starve her of dignity. Nolan rubbed his forehead. This is why I didn't want drama. You invited your mistress into our home, Amara said. You let her wear my robe. You let your mother speak to me like I'm an unpaid employee, and you're worried about drama. His face flushed. Not with shame, with irritation. Pack a bag, he said. Just essentials. We'll discuss the rest through attorneys. Attorneys? The word made Amara glance back at her phone. Miriam Cole, her mother's estate, the envelope, the missed calls. Something shifted inside her. Not hope, not yet. But a thread of awareness, thin and steady, pulling her attention toward something beyond this hallway. She looked at Nolan again. I'm not signing anything tonight. Celeste blinked. No one asked you to sign. Not tonight, Amara repeated. Not without counsel. Not while I'm being pressured out of my own home. For the first time, Celeste looked genuinely surprised. Nolan's voice dropped. Your own home. Amara did not answer. She did not know enough to answer. She only knew that her mother had once told her to keep every document, every receipt, every name. Lydia Hart had been a quiet woman, but never a careless one. Nolan stepped aside and pointed toward the stairs. 20 minutes. Amara walked past him without touching him. As she climbed the stairs, her phone buzzed again in her hand. This time it was not a voicemail. It was an email from Miriam Cole's office. Subject line: urgent estate transfer documents require your signature. Amara opened the email halfway up the stairs. The message was formal and short, but the words carried a weight she could feel before she understood them. Miriam Cole's office requested an immediate meeting. There were references to estate transfer documents, beneficiary verification, and pending signature authority. Attached were 3 files she could not open quickly because her hands were shaking, and the Wi-Fi in the house had always been unreliable near the 2nd floor. At the bottom of the email, one sentence stood out. Your mother left time-sensitive instructions that may affect both personal and business interests. Amara stopped on the landing. Business interests. Her mother had never owned a business, not one Amara knew about. Lydia Hart had kept books for small companies, helped neighbors with tax forms, and stretched grocery coupons like an art. She had been careful, private, and proud in a quiet way. But business interests sounded like conference rooms' attorneys' accounts with too many zeros. It sounded like a language from a life Amara had never been invited to enter. Keep moving, Nolan called from below. His voice snapped the moment shut. Amara locked her phone and walked into the bedroom. The room did not feel like hers anymore. The lamps were on, but the warmth was gone. Her side of the bed had already been stripped. Her pillow sat on the floor near the closet. Someone had opened her drawers. A few sweaters lay folded on the chair, not with care, but with impatience. Brielle had been in here. Amara knew it before she saw the lipstick mark on the rim of the water glass by the window. She stood still, breathing through the humiliation. It was one thing for Nolan to betray her. It was another to let another woman touch the private corners of her life, before he had even given Amara the mercy of a conversation. On the dresser sat the framed photo from their courthouse wedding. Nolan in a navy suit. Amara in a cream dress her mother had hemmed by hand. Back then he had held her fingers like she was something rare. Back then he had whispered that he liked her because she did not chase expensive things. Now he was downstairs with a woman who had turned ambition into perfume. Amara opened the closet and pulled down a small overnight bag. She did not take everything. She chose slowly. 2 work outfits, her clinic badge, a folder of personal documents, her mother's envelope from the funeral home still sealed, still tucked inside the side pocket of her tote. She stared at it for a second before sliding it into the overnight bag. Then she reached for the small metal cash box she kept behind her shoes. It held old receipts, copies of bank statements, and the check stubs Celeste once mocked her for keeping. Nolan had laughed too, saying only people who expected to be poor forever saved paper like that. Amara put the cash box in the bag. That was the first choice she made for herself that night. Downstairs, voices moved in low waves. She's taking too long, Celeste said. She always does, Nolan answered. That's part of the problem. Brielle murmured something Amara could not catch. Then Nolan laughed softly. The laugh hit harder than the words. Amara moved to the bathroom and collected only what belonged to her. Toothbrush, medication, hairbrush, the bottle of lavender lotion her mother had bought her last winter. She left behind the perfumes Nolan had given her, after arguments, the ones that had always felt less like apologies and more like receipts. When she returned to the bedroom, Nolan was standing in the doorway. He glanced at the bag. That's enough. Amara zipped it slowly. I'll need access to my things later. We'll schedule something. Through attorneys. His jaw tightened. If that's how you want to be? She looked at him, then really looked at him. The man she had made soup for when he worked late. The man whose resume she had edited before he landed the job he now thought made him untouchable. The man whose mother she had driven to appointments when Celeste's friends were too busy for inconvenience. "How I want to be," she said. Nolan looked away first. "Don't start rewriting history. I don't have to rewrite it. I kept records." His eyes snapped back to her. For a moment, the room sharpened. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means I'm not leaving confused." Something in his face shifted. Not fear yet. Irritation trying to cover uncertainty. Then Celeste appeared behind him, holding a folder against her chest. Nolan, enough. We did not bring her upstairs for a debate. Amara's eyes moved to the folder. It was thick, cream-colored, and labeled with Nolan's name. Legal papers. Prepared papers. Not a conversation. Not a sudden decision made in anger. A plan. Celeste noticed Amara looking and smiled. "You will receive copies when appropriate." "Divorce papers?" Amara asked. Nolan said nothing. That silence was familiar now. It was the language of men who wanted the benefit of cruelty without the burden of admitting it. Celeste stepped into the room. "This family has been patient. Nolan has a future, and Brielle understands the level of life he is stepping into." "You never did." Amara lifted the overnight bag from the bed. "If Brielle understands it so well, why is she wearing my robe instead of her own?" Celeste's face tightened. Nolan's voice dropped. "Amara." "No," she said. "You don't get to humiliate me and then manage my tone." He stared at her, stunned by the steadiness more than the words. She walked toward the door. Nolan did not move at first. Then he stepped aside. At the top of the stairs, Amara looked down into the foyer. Brielle stood near the entry table, one hand resting beside the takeout bag, as if the house had already accepted her. On the console lay another stack of papers Amara had not seen before. A property access form. A temporary separation agreement. A printed checklist with her name on it. They had expected her to break fast. They had expected her to sign whatever they placed in front of her. Amara reached into her coat pocket and pressed record on her phone. She did not raise it. She did not announce it. She simply let it rest in her hand as she descended the stairs. Celeste followed behind, her voice cold and clear. "Take only what you brought into this marriage." Amara reached the bottom step and looked around the house. The candle. The walls. The furniture she had cleaned, repaired, chosen, and paid toward in ways no one had bothered to count. Then she looked at the closed folder on the entry table, and for the first time that night, she felt the smallest edge of something stronger than grief. Because if Miriam Cole's email meant what Amara was beginning to suspect, Celeste had no idea how dangerous that sentence might become. Amara reached the foyer with her overnight bag in one hand and her phone resting quietly in the other. The recording was still running. She did not know yet if she would need it. She only knew Nolan had said attorneys. Celeste had mentioned papers. Brielle was standing in Amara's robe like the final signature on a decision made without her. If they wanted to pretend later that this had been peaceful, Amara would not let her memory be the only witness. Nolan noticed the bag first. "That's all, for tonight." Celeste gave a tight smile. "There will be no returning whenever you feel emotional. We'll arrange a time for you to collect the rest if Nolan agrees." "If Nolan agrees," Amara repeated. "This is his home," Celeste said. Amara looked at Nolan. "Is that what you're saying, too?" Nolan's mouth tightened. "Don't twist this. We both know who pays for this place." There it was. The sentence beneath every dinner, every argument, every quiet correction. He believed money made him the owner of not just the house, but the right to decide when Amara stopped belonging inside it. Amara glanced toward the console table where the property access form sat beneath the separation agreement. She could see only part of the text, but enough to understand the intention. They had not only planned to remove her, they had planned to control how she re-entered what she took and how small she would have to sound while asking. Brielle stepped forward, robe sleeve slipping slightly down her arm. Maybe tonight isn't the time to debate ownership. Everyone is upset. Amara looked at her. You're wearing my robe in my hallway. Don't talk to me about timing. Brielle's face stiffened. Celeste snapped, enough. No, Amara said again, and the word came easier this time. Not enough. Not yet. Nolan moved closer, lowering his voice like he was doing her a favor. Amara, don't make me call security. She almost stared at him in disbelief. Security. In the townhouse where she had changed air filters, replaced broken cabinet hinges, and spent weekends scrubbing baseboards because Celeste said respectable homes should never look neglected. Nolan had once forgotten the mortgage payment date during a work trip, and Amara had covered groceries and utilities that month without making him feel small. But now he was standing in front of her, threatening to call strangers to remove her from the life she had helped hold together. You don't need security, she said. I'm leaving. Good, Celeste said. Then leave with dignity. Amara turned toward her. Dignity is not something you hand me at the door, Celeste. The older woman's nostrils flared. For years, Amara had called her Mrs. Vale in moments of tension, trying to keep respect in the room even when none was returned. Tonight, she used her name. Nolan reached for the doorknob. Before he opened it, his phone buzzed on the entry table. The screen lit up and Amara saw Brielle's name appear with a heart beside it. Brielle saw it too. She moved quickly, but Nolan got there first. He picked up the phone and turned the screen down too late. Amara's chest tightened, but it was not surprise. It was confirmation. How long, she asked. Nolan looked annoyed. This isn't productive. How long Celeste cut in? Private matters are no longer your concern. Amara nodded once, slowly. That answer's enough. She adjusted her grip on the overnight bag and stepped toward the door. The moment she crossed the threshold, cold rain hit her face. It had started while she was upstairs. Thin at first, then steady, blurring the porch light and turning the walkway dark. Nolan remained inside, one hand on the open door. Her Toyota sat in the driveway, old and dull beneath the rain. Brielle's Mercedes gleamed at the curb. Celeste's Lexus sat behind it, polished white under the street lamp. The contrast was so clear it almost felt staged. Their cars looked like certainty. Hers looked like survival. Amara walked down the porch steps. Her heel slipped slightly on the wet concrete, but she caught herself. No one moved to help. Not Nolan, not Celeste, not Brielle. Across the street, a porch light came on. Then another. A neighbor stepped halfway behind a curtain. Someone had seen enough to know this was not an ordinary departure. Celeste appeared at the doorway, holding up her phone. For the record, she said loudly, Amara is leaving voluntarily. Amara stopped beside her car. Rain ran down the side of her face. Her coat was too thin for the weather, and the overnight bag pulled hard against her shoulder. She turned around slowly. I am leaving because my husband invited another woman into our home and told me to get out, she said clearly. I am leaving because you prepared legal papers without giving me counsel. And I am leaving because I refuse to be cornered into signing anything tonight. Celeste's smile vanished. Nolan stepped onto the porch. Turn that off. Amara looked at him. You first. Only then did he realize she had been recording too. For one breath, nobody moved. Then Nolan's face changed. The polished calm cracked, and something meaner showed through. You think a recording makes you powerful, he said. You have no money, Amara. No leverage. No one is coming to rescue you." The words should have broken her. Instead, her phone buzzed again in her hand. She looked down. A new voicemail notification appeared from Miriam Cole's office, followed by a text marked urgent. "Your mother left instructions. The assets are now active. Please call before anyone attempts to restrict your access to marital or personal property." Amara did not call Miriam Cole from the driveway. She wanted to. Her thumb hovered over the number while rain tapped against the windshield of her Toyota, while Nolan stood on the porch with his arms crossed, watching like he expected her to collapse before she reached the street. Celeste remained behind him, phone still raised but lower now. Brielle had disappeared from the doorway, as if the rain and the neighbors made the victory less elegant. Amara placed her phone face down on the passenger seat. Not here. Not while they could watch her mouth move and guess her fear. Not while Nolan could still pretend the house gave him power over her breathing. She started the car, backed out slowly, and drove away without looking at the porch again. Only when she reached the end of the block did her hands begin to shake. She pulled into the parking lot of a closed pharmacy and sat beneath a weak security light. The overnight bag rested on the back seat. The small metal cash box sat beside it. Her mother's sealed envelope lay inside the bag like a weight she could feel without touching. For several minutes, Amara did nothing. Then she opened her banking app. The joint checking account showed a balance of $48.17. She stared at the number, not because she was surprised, but because it confirmed the kind of man Nolan had chosen to become. That morning, there had been more than $7,000 in that account, their shared emergency fund. Her clinic paychecks had gone into it for years. Smaller than his deposits, yes, but steady. Honest. Real. Now it was almost empty. There was one transfer made at 6:03 p.m. to an account ending in numbers she did not recognize. Amara took a screenshot, then another. Then she checked the credit card they used for household expenses. Her access had been disabled. She took a screenshot of that, too. The rain blurred the windshield, turning the streetlights soft and broken. Amara wiped her face with her sleeve and realized she was crying. Quietly, without sound. The tears did not feel dramatic. They felt tired. She opened Miriam Cole's email again. This time away from Nolan's voice and Celeste's eyes, she read it carefully. The message did not say much directly. It mentioned required identity verification, a secure appointment, and documents prepared under Lydia Hart's estate plan. There were references to Hartwell Legacy Holdings, beneficiary authority, and asset activation. The words felt too large for the mother Amara remembered sitting at a small kitchen table, balancing a checkbook with a pencil sharpened down to almost nothing. But Lydia had also been private. Too private. Amara remembered late-night phone calls her mother ended when she entered the room. Locked drawers, names written on envelopes that never went in the regular mail. Once, when Amara had asked why her mother kept so many old legal folders, Lydia had smiled sadly and said, "Because paper remembers when people pretend not to." At the time, Amara thought she meant taxes. Now she was not sure. Her phone buzzed again. This time she answered. "Ms. Vale," a woman said. The voice was calm, older, professional, but not cold. "This is Miriam Cole." Amara closed her eyes. "Yes, this is Amara." A small pause followed, as if Miriam had been waiting to hear her voice for a long time. "I am very relieved you answered," Amara swallowed. "I'm sorry. I saw the messages. I've had a difficult night. I understand more than you may think," Miriam said carefully. "Are you somewhere safe?" The question almost broke her. Amara looked out at the empty pharmacy lot. Safe enough. "That is not the same thing." "No," Amara whispered. "It isn't." Miriam's tone shifted, still gentle, now more direct. Your mother gave my office specific instructions for this exact kind of situation. I cannot explain everything over an unsecured call, but I need you to listen closely. Do not sign anything from your husband or his attorney tonight. Do not agree by text to leave property behind. Do not delete any messages. Save records of any account restrictions, transfers, threats, or attempts to deny you access to personal belongings. Amara looked toward the back seat where the cash box sat under the shadow of her coat. I already started saving screenshots. Good, Miriam said. Very good. The praise was small, but it steadied her. My husband emptied most of our joint account, Amara said. The words tasted humiliating, but she forced them out. And they had papers ready. Separation forms, maybe divorce papers. His mother was recording me. Did you record as well? Yes. Another pause. Keep that file backed up somewhere secure as soon as you can. Amara nodded, though Miriam could not see her. What is this about my mother didn't have anything? Not like this. She worked, she saved. She lived simply. She lived intentionally, Miriam said. The answer sent a chill through Amara deeper than the rain. Miriam continued. Your mother was not careless with what she built. She was careful with who knew. There is a difference. Amara pressed her free hand against the steering wheel. What did she build? Not over the phone, Miriam said. I need you in my office tomorrow morning. 10 o'clock? Bring government ID, your mother's envelope if you have it, and any documents related to your marriage and residence. Amara looked back at the overnight bag. I have the envelope. Do not let anyone else touch it. The way Miriam said it made Amara sit straighter. For the first time that night, the fear began to change shape. It was still there, but no longer alone. Beside it stood something harder. Something awake. Ms. Vale, Miriam said, lowering her voice, before you find a hotel, I need to tell you one more thing. If your husband believes you have no leverage, let him continue believing that for now. Amara went still. Miriam's next words came slowly. Because by tomorrow, you may need to make decisions that affect more than your marriage. Amara spent the night in a budget hotel near the highway, the kind with thin walls, a humming ice machine, and a front desk clerk who barely looked up when she paid for one room with the debit card that still worked. She carried her overnight bag inside, locked the door, then pushed the desk chair under the handle, even though she knew it would not stop much. It made her feel less exposed. That was enough. For a while, she sat on the edge of the bed without taking off her coat. The room smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet. Her Toyota was visible from the window, parked beneath a flickering light. She watched it like it was the last proof that she still had a place in the world, even if that place had 4 worn tires and a cracked dashboard. Then she opened her bag. The first thing she removed was her mother's envelope. Lydia Hart's handwriting sat across the front in blue ink, Amara's name written carefully, as if the hand that wrote it had known this moment would hurt. Amara touched the letters but did not open it yet. Miriam had told her to bring it sealed. For once, Amara obeyed the person trying to protect her instead of the people trying to shrink her. She plugged in her phone, backed up the recording to her private email, then uploaded screenshots of the bank transfer and disabled credit card. Each file felt small, too small for the pain behind it. But when she saw them saved in order labeled by date and time, something settled in her chest. Proof had a different kind of warmth. At 9:37 p.m., Nolan texted, "You embarrassed yourself tonight. We'll talk when you're ready to be reasonable." Amara read it once. Then she took a screenshot. She did not reply. Another message came 3 minutes later. "Also, don't contact Brielle. This has nothing to do with her." Amara almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. A woman wearing her robe in her hallway had everything to do with it. She took another screenshot and turned the phone face down. Sleep came late and shallow. Every sound from the hallway woke her. Every car door outside made her body tense. Once close to 3 in the morning, she dreamed of standing in her old kitchen while Celeste opened every cabinet and labeled what Amara was allowed to touch. She woke with her hand pressed against the sealed envelope. By morning, her eyes were swollen, but her voice was steady when she checked out. Miriam Cole's office was downtown on the 21st floor of a building Amara had passed many times but never entered. The lobby was polished stone and quiet glass. Security looked professional without being aggressive. Amara felt suddenly aware of her wrinkled coat, her old shoes, the overnight bag slung over one shoulder. She almost turned around. Then the receptionist looked up and said, "Miss Vale." Not suspiciously, not dismissively, respectfully. Amara stopped. "Yes, Ms. Cole is expecting you. Please come this way." No one had asked whether she belonged. No one looked at her bag. No one treated her like she was in the wrong room. That simple courtesy almost hurt more than Celeste's cruelty, because Amara realized how long she had lived without it. Miriam Cole stood when Amara entered her office. She was in her early 60s, silver-haired, composed, with the calm posture of someone who had spent decades handling powerful people without being impressed by them. Her suit was simple. Her eyes were kind but sharp. "Amara," she said. "Not Mrs. Vale. Not Lydia's daughter. Just Amara," as if the name already carried weight. Amara shook her hand. "Thank you for seeing me. I am sorry it took a crisis for us to meet." The words made Amara's throat tighten, but she sat down before emotion could weaken her knees. Miriam's office overlooked the city, but the blinds were half drawn. On the table between them sat a leather folder, a tablet, and a slim silver recorder. Miriam noticed Amara looking at it. "With your permission, I'd like to record our meeting for accuracy. Estate transfers of this size require clean documentation." Amara frowned slightly. "Of this size?" Miriam did not answer right away. "First, your identification." Amara gave her driver's license, then the sealed envelope. Miriam handled it with care, almost reverence. She checked the seal, made a note, then opened it with a letter knife. Inside were 2 pages and a smaller sealed card. Miriam read the first page silently. Her face did not change, but something in her shoulders softened. "Your mother wrote this for you," she said. "You may read it privately later, unless you want it now." Amara looked at the letter but shook her head. "If I read it now, I may not be able to hear anything else." Miriam nodded, as if that answer told her something important. "Then we'll begin with facts." She opened the leather folder and turned it toward Amara. The first page held names Amara recognized only from emails and strange scraps of memory. Hartwell Legacy Holdings, Ashford Vale Capital, Fairview Medical Properties, Northline Infrastructure Fund. There were charts, ownership percentages, trustee names, and a timeline that went back years. Amara stared at it. "I don't understand." "Your mother was the controlling founder behind Hartwell Legacy Holdings," Miriam said. Quietly, through layered entities and professional management. She began with commercial bookkeeping, then tax advisory, then minority investments in distressed medical and property assets. Over time, those holdings grew. Amara shook her head slowly. "My mother lived in a 1-bedroom apartment." "Yes," Miriam said. "By choice." The room felt too still. Miriam continued, careful with each word. "You are her sole beneficiary. The estate cannot be fully transferred until verification is complete, and there will be tax governance and trustee steps. But operational authority began upon her death under documents she executed 18 months ago." Amara's fingers tightened around the edge of the folder. operational authority over what Miriam turned one more page. This one had a number printed near the bottom. Not handwritten, not dramatic, just there, clean and impossible. Amara could not make her eyes accept it. Miriam's voice stayed calm. The current estimated value is $180 million, subject to formal valuation updates. Amara looked up. For several seconds she could not speak. Then Miriam slid another file from beneath the first folder. This one was thinner marked confidential with Nolan's company name printed across the tab. Before we discuss the full estate, Miriam said we need to talk about your husband's employer. Amara looked at the name on the file and felt her stomach tighten. Vale Urban Partners, Nolan's company, the same name he had once practiced saying in front of the bathroom mirror before investor meetings. The same company whose logo appeared on his laptop, his business cards, and the glass doors of the downtown office where he had started acting like ambition made him untouchable. For months, he had spoken about a redevelopment project as if it were the key to a different life. A better office, a higher title, a new social circle. Now that name sat in Miriam Cole's office inside a confidential folder connected to Amara's mother. Miriam opened it slowly. Your husband works in acquisitions, correct? Yes, Amara said. Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. Senior project manager. He was hoping to move into an executive role. With the East Bank District redevelopment, Amara stared at her. How do you know that because Ashford Vale Capital is one of the private funding partners reviewing that project? The room tilted slightly. Amara sat back trying to place the words in an order that made sense. Ashford Vale Capital, Vale Urban Partners, East Bank District, Nolan, Brielle, her mother. All of them suddenly stood too close together. I thought Ashford Vale was just a coincidence, Amara said quietly. The name. It is not connected to Nolan's family, Miriam said. Your mother used Vale as part of a legacy structure long before you married. It came from your grandmother's maiden name. Your husband's surname made the overlap inconvenient, but not legally connected. Amara let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding. Miriam turned a page. The East Bank project has been under review for months. It involves commercial property affordable clinic space and mixed-use housing. Your mother's entities acquired several parcels years ago through Hartwell Legacy Holdings. Ashford Vale Capital holds approval rights over one funding tranche and certain community impact requirements. Fairview. The clinic. Amara's throat tightened. You said clinic space. Miriam nodded. One of the redevelopment conditions includes protecting Fairview Community Health Clinic's lease, or relocating it into a subsidized space within the new district. Your mother insisted on that before her passing. Amara looked away toward the window. Fairview had been struggling for months. The director had warned staff that rent might rise. Patients were worried. Nurses whispered about layoffs. Amara had lost sleep over a place her mother had been quietly protecting without ever saying a word. She knew where I worked, Amara said. She knew what mattered to you, Miriam replied. That nearly broke her. For years, Nolan had called Fairview a dead-end job. Celeste had said charity work was admirable until it became an excuse for underachievement. Brielle at one dinner had smiled politely and called the clinic sweet the way people described hobbies they did not respect. None of them knew the project they wanted depended partly on preserving the very place they mocked. Miriam continued. Your husband's name appears in several internal communications related to that project. His direct authority is limited, but he is close enough to the process that any personal conflict should have been disclosed. Amara's eyes moved back to the file. Brielle is involved too. Yes. Brielle Mercer is listed as an outside consultant on investor relations and community positioning. Community positioning. Amara almost laughed. Brielle had stood in Amara's hallway wearing her robe while attached to a project that claimed to care about vulnerable communities. "What happens now?" Amara asked. "Nothing dramatic today," Miriam said. "That is important. We do not make decisions from humiliation. We verify, we review, we protect your legal position." Amara nodded slowly. A part of her wanted one sentence, one order, one clean strike that would make Nolan feel even a fraction of what he had made her feel in the rain. But that was pain talking. Her mother had not built all of this, so Amara could burn it down in one morning. "What can I do?" she asked. Miriam's expression softened. "You can choose counsel. You can preserve records. You can avoid direct communication except in writing. And you can decide whether to authorize a preliminary conflict review of the East Bank project. That would involve Nolan. It may involve communications he sent, expense records, disclosure forms, and any role Brielle played. A review does not punish anyone by itself. It simply asks whether the project has been handled properly. Handled properly. Amara thought of the joint account emptied at 6:03 p.m. She thought of Celeste recording her on the porch, claiming Amara was leaving voluntarily. She thought of Nolan saying she had no leverage while his future rested closer to her mother's desk than he could imagine. "Yes," Amara said. Miriam did not smile. She only made a note. "I'll contact the governance team." Quietly. Amara looked at the folder again. "Nolan can't know yet. He won't hear it from this office," Miriam said. "But if the review begins, certain people at Vale Urban Partners may receive document requests. They will not see your full interest unless legally necessary." Amara absorbed that. It was strange, this kind of power. Not loud. Not satisfying in the way anger wanted it to be. Just heavy. Serious. Real. Her phone buzzed on the table. Nolan. She did not answer. A text appeared a moment later. "My attorney is drafting the separation agreement. Don't make this harder. Also, I need you to confirm in writing that you left voluntarily." Amara stared at the message. Miriam saw her face change. "May I?" Amara handed her the phone. Miriam read it once. Then she placed it back on the table screen up. "Do not respond emotionally." "I wasn't going to." "No," Miriam said quietly. "I believe you." The trust in that sentence steadied Amara more than any promise of money. Miriam slid a blank legal pad toward her. "Write down everything from last night while it is fresh. Times words, names, what was on the table, what they asked you to do, what you recorded. Details matter." Amara picked up the pen. Her hand trembled at first. Then it steadied. She wrote Nolan opened the door at approximately 8:20 p.m. Then Celeste stood behind him. Then Brielle was wearing my robe. Line by line, Amara took back the night. Half an hour later, Miriam's desk phone rang. She answered, listened, and her expression changed just slightly. "Yes," she said. "Send it securely." She hung up and looked at Amara. The governance team found something already. There was a preliminary expense flag tied to Vale Urban Partners and a consultant account connected to Brielle Mercer. Amara's pulse slowed. Miriam turned her monitor toward her just enough for Amara to see the subject line of the incoming file. Potential misuse of project development funds. East Bank review required. The file on Miriam's screen did not accuse anyone by name. That made it feel more serious. Potential misuse of project development funds. Preliminary expense irregularities. Consultant reimbursement review. The phrases were dry and careful, the kind lawyers used when they wanted facts to arrive before emotion. But Amara saw the dates. She saw the amounts. She saw Brielle Mercer's consulting account tied to Dinner's travel hotel charges and private event deposits that did not look like community outreach. One charge had been made the same evening Nolan told Amara he was working late. Another matched the weekend. He said he had to drive to Cincinnati for a site visit. Amara did not move for a long moment. Miriam watched her quietly. This is early. It does not prove intent by itself. I understand. But Amara understood more than Miriam knew. She remembered Nolan packing a garment bag for that Cincinnati trip, telling her not to wait up, then coming home with a scent on his shirt that did not belong to any conference room. She remembered Brielle's laugh during a speakerphone call, too relaxed, too intimate, before Nolan quickly lowered the volume. All those small moments had looked like shadows then. Now they had receipts. Miriam closed the file halfway, giving Amara the dignity of not being forced to stare at the details. The governance team will need authorization to continue. Because you are now the beneficial authority under your mother's operating documents, your consent matters. Amara looked up. My consent? Yes. Not for criminal conclusions, not for personal retaliation, but for a formal internal review of any funding stream tied to your inherited entities. That includes the East Bank project. The words moved through Amara slowly. Consent, authority, review. Last night Nolan had spoken as if she had no power over her own coat on the porch. Now Miriam was telling her that a project Nolan had built his future around could not be fully reviewed without Amara's approval. It did not feel like victory. It felt like responsibility. What would my mother have done? Amara asked, then regretted the question because grief rose behind it too quickly. Miriam softened. Your mother would have asked for the truth first. Then she would have protected the people who could be harmed by powerful men hiding behind paperwork. Amara's eyes burned. Fairview came to mind again. The clinic. The patients who did not know that boardrooms and funding tranches could decide whether they had a place to get care next winter. Nolan had mocked that clinic as if it were beneath him. Brielle had packaged community language for investors while possibly billing personal luxuries to the same project. Amara picked up the pen. Authorize the review, she said. Miriam nodded once and wrote it down. We'll keep it confidential for now. You should also meet with separate divorce counsel. I can provide referrals, but I cannot represent you in both estate governance and domestic matters. Because of conflict, exactly. Amara almost smiled at the clean honesty of it. After a night of manipulation, proper boundaries sounded like kindness. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was not Nolan. It was Celeste. Amara let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then she declined and waited. The text arrived immediately. You are making this uglier than it needs to be. Nolan is willing to be generous if you behave sensibly. Do not embarrass this family by telling people private matters. Amara placed the phone on the desk and took a screenshot. Then another message came. Also, the house keys must be returned today. You left voluntarily. I have video. Miriam read it when Amara turned the screen toward her. Her expression did not change, but her voice cooled. Do not return any keys until your property rights and residency status are reviewed. Laws vary by state, and we will not assume anything from a text message written under pressure. Amara nodded. For the first time since Nolan opened the door, she did not feel alone in the sentence. Miriam's assistant entered with a printed referral sheet and a secure flash drive. The assistant was a composed woman named Dana, maybe in her 40s, who spoke to Amara with the same calm respect the receptionist had shown. She explained how to store copies of the recordings and screenshots, how to avoid changing metadata, how to forward any new messages without editing them. No one acted like Amara was dramatic. No one asked why she had stayed. No one made her prove that betrayal hurt. By noon, Amara had a meeting scheduled with a divorce attorney for the next morning. She also had a secure portal login, a list of documents to gather, and temporary access to an estate-funded emergency account for personal safety and lodging while the beneficiary verification finished. Miriam explained every step carefully. Nothing was instant. Nothing was magic. There would be reviews, signatures, tax council trustees, and formal valuation updates. That made it feel more real. At 12:18 p.m., Nolan called. Amara did not answer. At 12:21, he texted. "My lawyer says you need to sign the temporary separation agreement today if you want any access to your things. Don't play games you can't afford." Amara looked at the message and felt the old wound open. Not because of the threat itself, but because of how sure he was that fear would still move her. She typed nothing. Instead, she forwarded the message to the secure portal. Miriam watched from across the desk and gave a small nod. Good. That one word held more support than an entire year of Nolan's apologies. Amara left the office just after 1. The sky had cleared, but the sidewalks were still wet. Her coat was wrinkled. Her eyes were tired. She still had no permanent place to sleep. Yet when she stepped out of the building, she stood differently than she had the night before. Not taller, exactly. More present. She walked to her Toyota and opened the door. Before she could get in, her phone buzzed with an email from Vale Urban Partners. The subject line made her hand tighten around the keys. Mandatory Document Preservation Notice, East Bank District Redevelopment Review. Nolan's name appeared in the preview, and beneath it, Brielle's. The email did not explain everything. It did not need to. Amara stood beside her Toyota with one hand on the open door and read the first lines twice. Vale Urban Partners had issued a mandatory document preservation notice to employees and consultants connected to the East Bank District redevelopment. All emails, expense reports, messages, calendar entries, reimbursement records, and third-party communications were to be retained immediately. Nolan's name appeared under project personnel. Brielle's appeared under external consultants. The notice came from the company's legal department, not from Miriam. That meant the review had moved beyond quiet discussion. It had entered the system where people could no longer delete their way back into innocence. Amara got into the car and sat still. Her phone buzzed less than a minute later. Nolan. This time she answered, not because she wanted to hear him, but because Miriam had told her not every call needed to be avoided if she stayed calm and documented afterward. She put him on speaker and opened a notes app with her other hand. "What did you do?" Nolan demanded. No greeting, no apology, no trace of the man who once kissed her forehead in grocery store aisles because he said she looked serious choosing peaches. Amara kept her voice even. "I don't know what you mean. Don't play innocent. We just got some legal hold notice at work. East Bank. Everyone's freaking out. My name is on it. Brielle's name is on it. That sounds like a company matter." He laughed sharply. A company matter. Suddenly you know how companies work? Amara looked through the windshield at the wet street. Enough to know you should speak to your own counsel before discussing it with me. Silence. For the first time, he seemed to hear something different in her voice. "Who are you with?" he asked. "No one you need to speak to." "Amara? Nolan?" The way she said his name stopped him. Not loud, not angry, just firm. His tone lowered. "Listen. If you're trying to punish me because of last night, you're making a mistake. This project is bigger than our marriage." She almost closed her eyes. There it was again. Bigger than their marriage. Bigger than her pain. Bigger than the woman he had put out in the rain. "I didn't issue your company's notice," she said. "But you know something. I know you emptied the joint account before you told me to leave." He went quiet again. Then he said, "That money was safer with me until we figured things out." Amara wrote the sentence down. "That's what you're calling it. You were emotional. I was being removed from my home. You left voluntarily." "No," she said. "I did not." His voice sharpened. "My mother has video. So do I." The silence that followed was long enough for Amara to hear him breathing. Then, from somewhere behind him, Brielle's voice cut in low and tense. "Ask her who she talked to." Amara's fingers tightened around the phone. Nolan must have covered the speaker, but not well enough. She heard his muffled reply, then Celeste's voice, farther away, colder and clearer. "Do not let her manipulate you. She has nothing." Amara ended the call. Her hand shook afterward, but not from fear alone. Anger was there now, clean and awake. She saved her notes. Then she sent them through the secure portal. A reply came from Dana within minutes. "Received. Please do not discuss Eastbank further with Mr. Vale." Amara typed back, "Understood." Then she drove to Fairview Community Health Clinic. She did not know why at first. Her shift had been covered after she called in saying she had a family emergency. She could have gone back to the hotel. She could have sat alone and stared at legal documents until her brain went numb. But Fairview was the last place she had felt useful before her life split open. The clinic looked the same from the outside. Brick walls, faded sign, patients in the waiting room. The front desk printer jammed again, whining like it had done the night before. Marisol, the office manager, looked up and frowned with concern. "Amara, honey, you don't look well." "I'm okay," Amara said, though both of them knew it was not entirely true. Marisol came around the desk and touched her arm lightly. "You sure that small kindness almost undid her? Not because it was grand, but because it asked nothing from her." Amara nodded. "I just needed to check something." She walked toward the back office where the lease notices were kept. The director, Denise Calder, was inside, reading a stack of mail with her glasses low on her nose. She was in her late 50s, practical and warm, the kind of woman who could calm a waiting room just by walking through it, Amara Denise said. "You should be resting." "I know. I won't stay long." Amara hesitated. "Can I ask about the East Bank relocation discussions?" Denise's face changed. "How do you know about that?" Amara kept her expression neutral. "I heard the project name recently." Denise sighed, rubbing her forehead. "We were told there might be a path to remain in the district. Some private investor insisted on community clinic protections, but we never got the name. If that falls through, I don't know what happens to us." Amara felt the words settle deep. Some private investor. Her mother. Lydia Hart, who had lived with bargain tea and old curtains, had quietly protected a clinic full of strangers because her daughter believed in that work. Amara turned away for a second before Denise could see her eyes. "Are you sure you're okay?" Denise asked again. Amara looked back at her. "Not yet. But I'm trying to be." Her phone buzzed. This time it was an email from her new divorce attorney's office, confirming an emergency consultation the next morning. Attached was a document request list: bank statements, recordings, proof of residence, communications about being removed from the home. And at the bottom, in bold one line, stood out: "Do not sign any temporary agreement from Nolan Vale or his representatives before review." Amara left the clinic through the side door and sat in her car again. Before she could start the engine, a message from Nolan appeared. "We need to settle this before my board meeting tomorrow. If you make me look bad, you'll regret it." A second later, Miriam forwarded a separate notice. "Ashford Vale Capital has been asked to attend tomorrow's East Bank board review. Beneficiary representative may be required." The East Bank board review did not end with shouting. It ended with questions Nolan could not answer cleanly. No one accused him of everything in one dramatic sentence. The attorneys asked for records. The governance team paused his role pending review. Brielle's consulting agreement was suspended while her reimbursements were audited. The redevelopment deal survived, but not with Nolan leading it. Ashford Vale Capital kept the clinic protection clause in place, and for the first time, Nolan understood that the charity work he had mocked had been tied to the funding partner he needed most. The divorce took months, not minutes. Amara's attorneys verified the estate structure trust documents and inheritance records. The court treated her inherited interests separately from the marital issues subject to proper legal review. Nolan fought at first, then softened when his own messages. The emptied joint account, the porch recording, and Celeste's video made the story harder to twist. He did not lose everything, but he lost the version of himself he had been trying to sell. Celeste called twice through intermediaries, once to say families made mistakes, once to ask whether things could be handled privately for everyone's dignity. Amara did not call back. She had learned that some people used the word dignity only when consequences finally reached their door. When the settlement was signed, Nolan waited outside the conference room. He looked thinner, older, less polished. "I didn't know," he said. Amara looked at him without anger. That was the problem. He lowered his eyes. If I had known about the money, she stopped him gently. "I know." That was the last private sentence she gave him. A few weeks later, Amara returned to Fairview Community Health Clinic. Not as the tired employee Celeste had mocked, but as the founding backer of the Lydia Hart Stability Fund created to help adults leave financially controlling relationships, secure temporary housing, and pay for legal consultations before fear forced them into unfair agreements. She kept the name quiet at first. Then Denise put a small plaque near the front desk, simple and plain, just as Lydia would have wanted. That afternoon, Miriam gave Amara her mother's letter again. This time Amara read it alone in the clinic's empty break room. Lydia had written that money was only a tool. It could open doors, protect choices, and buy time, but it could not make love honest. It could not make cruel people kind, and it should never become the reason Amara believed she was worthy. Amara cried then, not because she had won, but because her mother had known the truth before she did. She was enough before the money. She would be enough after it. Nolan kept working, but not in the circle he once dreamed of entering. Brielle moved on to another firm after the audit ended her contract. Celeste remained elegant in public, but her control over the family story was gone. People did not need gossip. They had seen enough. As for Amara, she chose peace. She chose locked boundaries, clean paperwork, and quiet mornings where no one measured her worth by a bank balance. She chose work that protected people who still needed a way out. And when someone at the clinic asked if she ever wanted Nolan to understand what he had lost, Amara only smiled softly. "He already does," she said. "That doesn't mean he gets to come back." If you were Amara, would you ever speak to Nolan again? Or would peace be the final answer? Leave your thoughts below.